I'm not going into that, the spats between the DA and Action SA. I think, and I said to them, they must remember that they must start thinking rationally. It's not about emotions.
So I'm your host, Donald Brown. Back with us is Dr. Pieter Groenewald, who is, of course, the leader of the Vryheidsfront Plus. So, Pieter, are you optimistic? Well, first of all, obviously, welcome back to the show. Are you optimistic about the future? Are you optimistic about the multi-party charter that has now been agreed to, that is now in effect?
Thank you, Donald. Yes, it was quite a time we had a chat. Yes, I'm always positive. I'm also positive for the future of South Africa. And let me get to the charter as such, the multi-party charter for South Africa. The reason why the Freedom Front Plus participated in that, and I suppose we're going to talk about the charter in more detail, is that the people of South Africa, the electorate, where I've met people and where I meet people, they say, but the opposition must take hands, they must stand together. And I said, yes, I agree, because we must understand that there is no single opposition party who on its own will be able to win the ANC in an election. The only way to beat the ANC in an election is if opposition parties take hands and say that we say to the people of South Africa, we are taking hands. So, and we say to the people that after the election, and I put emphasis on after the election, if the opposition parties are in a position to form a coalition and oust the ANC as a government, we undertake towards the electorate that here we are, these are the different political parties that promise that they will take hands and to oust the ANC as an ANC government.
Are you satisfied with the DA's commitment that they will not form a coalition with the ANC?
You must always understand that as far as the charter is concerned, there is a shared vision and there is an agreement of undertaking. And the DA did sign the undertaking where they say quite clearly, and the agreement is to say that we undertake that we will be loyal and support a coalition opposition government if we have enough votes to ensure that. And there's also a further part in that agreement, and that is to say, and that the political parties will not vote for any office bearer of, for instance, the ANC or the EFF. So they've given the written undertaking. Of course, they can decide not to do that, and I know in the public media, Helen Zille, as well as John Steenhuisen and other, can I say, high officials and members of the Democratic Alliance is on record, where they said that if the ANC get rid of the so-called red faction, they will be willing to take hands with the ANC and form a coalition. And you must also see it in the context that when John Steenhuisen announced the so-called Moonshot Pact, which is not there anymore, he said that enemy number one is the EFF, because they must prevent a coalition between the ANC and the EFF. And yes, I can read between the lines, the electorate can read between the lines, and the door is open in a certain situation where the DA can still decide to go into a coalition with the ANC. But, and I said it in the convention, and I said it in all the negotiations, that the political party who signed the agreement must understand that if they do not be faithful to that agreement, the electorate will deal with them in a next election. 2024 will not be the last election in South Africa. In 26, we're going to have a local government election. And 29, we're going to have another national provincial election. And if parties who gave certain undertakings and they do not comply with that, I am of the opinion, and I then will appeal to the electorate to deal with those political parties.
Should the Patriotic Alliance be part of the multi-party charter?
What is the question?
Patriotic Alliance, should they be part of the multi-party charter?
I am on record where I said that at this moment, and I was one of the political parties who objected to their inclusion, and the reason is quite simple. It's not a trustworthy party in a coalition. And the example is the city of Johannesburg. And let me give the facts and the reason why I say they're not a trustworthy partner. And in short, it was a matter of, yes, there was a request that the Inkatha Freedom Party, IFP's member being elected to the speaker position, but the DA did not comply to that. We couldn't reach an agreement on that. What then happened is that the Patriotic Alliance decided that because of that, then they voted for the ANC and decided and went into a coalition with the ANC. Now, why I say it's not trustworthy, the Freedom Front Plus was also unhappy about the fact that the DA didn't want to accept the councillor from the IFP. But we didn't throw our toys out of the cot and then decided to vote and side and go into a coalition with the ANC, like the PA. And if you're in a coalition, if you want to be a trustworthy partner, even if you're not satisfied with a decision, then you do not side with other, can I say, opponent political parties. Then, and that's what coalitions is about, that is to compromise. And therefore, I am on record and I'm still against the inclusion of the Patriotic Alliance. However, I must say there is a mechanism that has been decided in the convention when we formulated the multi-party charter. And that is that other political parties can apply to become a member of the charter. But then, of course, they will have to prove that they will comply to the principles of the charter and that they will be trustworthy.
Interesting, because I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think a person like Dr. Corné Mulder believes Gator McKenzie and the PA should be part of the multi-party charter.
With great respect, it is not what Dr. Corné Mulder believes. It is what is the view of the party, what is the view of the other members of the charter. The fact, and what Gator McKenzie said that Dr. Corné Mulder invited him, that was in a private discussion. Never ever was there an official decision to say, go and ask the Patriotic Alliance to become part of the charter. So we must just distinguish as far as that is concerned. The door is open. We must remember that coalitions are formally formed after an election. And there will be other political parties. Let's take, for instance, the ACDP. Let's take, for instance, Rise Mzansi or Boza of Mmusi Maimane. Depending on the results of the election, that will be after the election, some of them will join. And I do believe they will join in a coalition government if it is possible. Some of them may even join before the election. So the door is still open. If the Patriotic Alliance then comes forward and have good arguments, and the charter members decides to allow them, then it is so. But we must remember one thing, that, and I want to put emphasis on that matter is to ensure that you have trustworthy partners, because we cannot afford to have the same chaos on local government elections or local government level, like in the city of Johannesburg, on national level. We just cannot afford that.
It's interesting that you mentioned that. I recently saw an interview with Herman Mashaba that he said that he believes the Patriotic Alliance is more trustworthy than the Democratic Alliance. Do you think that's the case?
I'm not going into that, can I say, arguments and can I say the spats between the DA and Action SA. I think, and I said to them, they must remember that they must start thinking rationally. It's not about emotions. Of course, each and every party and party leader has his or her own views in this specific instance on the Patriotic Alliance. So yes, you are entitled to your views, but that doesn't mean that the PA must be accommodated immediately. And the criteria is quite clear. As I said, the door is not closed as far as that is concerned. They can apply, and then they will have to convince the present members of the charter whether they will be permitted to be formed and be part of the charter or not.
Interesting. What is your take? I think the agreement was that the biggest political party will be the deputy president of South Africa, and yeah, he will have another portfolio. I can't remember the title. What is your take on that agreement, that specific agreement?
Well, I am on record before the convention that I said that the largest political party in the coalition and its leader will not be necessarily the president. And we made a decision, and the members agreed on that. But then the DA said they will support that, but then they want to be leader of government business in Parliament. So you must understand, it is leader of government business, and that is a position determined in the Constitution of South Africa. However, it is not automatically the deputy president of South Africa. The president decides on the cabinet and who the deputy president is. But in practice, since 1994, it was actually the trend that the leader of business, government business in Parliament, was the deputy president. So it can happen, but in terms of legislation, it is not, can I say, definitely that it will be like that.
All right. Interesting. What do you expect for the Vryheidsfront Plus in 2024? Do you see an increased result, a significant increased result? What is the future prospects of the Vryheidsfront Plus?
I'm very positive, and I am sure about an increased support. In 2019 election, I said we asked for 1 million votes. People thought that it is totally opportunistic. And they were all surprised when we had an increase of 250% of support. So if we get 100% support, or can I say increased support in the next election, then at least we will have basically 1 million votes. So in one election, if we could have increased our support with 250%, then I say it is not very, it's always, an election is an election, but it is quite realistic then to say that we can at least increase our support with another, say, 100 to 150%.
Are you worried about the influence of foreign actors like Russia or China in this next election?
Well, I know that there are allegations of interference from these countries in elections. We are already busy to ensure that the electoral system and the election as such and the system be tightened where we as opposition parties can have influence and to ensure that it is a free and fair election. For instance, you must remember that at each and every voting station, opposition parties, they are present when the votes are counted, and they must sign a document that they agree with the result of that specific voting station. So it lies upon the opposition parties to ensure that we have enough people, officials, that can be in each and every voting station, ensure that the counting process is correctly, and if you sign the results, we can still also control that to see when the results ends up in the result center, that we can compare to see whether it is the same. And it happened in previous elections that, for instance, the Freedom Front Plus specifically, we picked up, but the results at the center was not according to the results at the voting stations. We later complained, they looked at it and they adjusted. And that adjusted result actually ensured that we, for instance, got an extra member of parliament. So it is possible to have incorrect results, but there is an obligation and, can I say, a responsibility on all the partners to ensure that we put extra effort in to see whether the results are correctly. Of course, you have the problem. For instance, let's take the last election on local government election. And I must say, and it's very important that our voters, they must understand in the 2024 election, you can only vote at the voting station where you are registered. And let me say it very clearly. Remember previous elections, provincial and national, if you're in a province, even if you were registered as a voter, say, for instance, where I live in Stilfontein, and on voting day I am in, say, Rustenburg, which is still part of the province, I could vote for the provincial election. And when it comes to the national election, you can vote in any place in the country, irrespective, as long as you're a registered voter. It has been changed now. You can only vote, not even in your province. If you're registered in Stilfontein at a specific polling station, voting station, I must go and vote there. I cannot go to another town close by like Potchefstroom and vote there, say I'm still in the same province. So it's very important that our electorate understand you will only be able to vote from the voting station where you registered. Coming back to what I wanted to say, we experience on local government level, and that was that certain voting stations didn't have enough ballot papers. Some of them opened late. Some of them had the incorrect vote, can I say, for that specific area. They had the wrong ballot papers there. They had a ballot there that's actually referred to another ward. So there are those, can I say, administrative problems from the Electoral Commission. We have regular meetings with the Electoral Commission, and we mention these things, and we want security and an assurance that it will not happen. So we are working on that specifically. So for these other foreign countries to interfere, yes, everything is possible these days with technology and everything, but it's not just as simple of interfering.
Peter, I did an interview with Dr. Anthea Jeffrey from the Institute of Race Relations, and she raised her concern. The Institute of Race Relations have raised their concern in terms of the new Electoral Amendment Act that the ANC could potentially still get 45% of the votes, but still have 51 representation in Parliament. Is that something to be worried about?
I'm not so sure about that calculation. I first had to see the calculation. I'm not so sure about it. In fact, I want to say I don't think it is possible, because in terms, we still have the proportional representation or representative electoral system. That means, in simple terms, if you get 10% of the vote, you get 10% of the members. If you get 45% of the vote, you will only get 45% of the seats in Parliament. To say that you will get 45% and then it can increase to 51%, I do not agree. And the reason is, I think they're making a miscalculation, because in terms of the formula, which is quite complex, is that the independents' votes, for instance, are discarded if they are not elected, and even if they are elected. So then you make a new calculation with the other political parties who did get certain support. So it will be then evenly spread amongst those political parties. And maybe, because I mean, mathematics is mathematics, I would be able to say it will, in extreme situations, depending also on the percentage of people voting or the voting percentage, that it can make a difference, say, of 1, maximum 2, but to either sides. Some parties can, for instance, gain 1 seat, but they can also lose 1 seat. And that includes the ANC. There's no such situation where the ANC is put in a preferential position in the calculation of that formula and the final results of the election.